Hey everyone, Kaitlin here. Welcome back to another episode of Baldwin Breakdowns, where we're looking at big concepts, big ideas, and lots of big. Oh, I'm on the wrong slide. Going back. And lots of big feelings. I don't want to do this again. Um, so this feeling, the topic for this week is depression. And so um, I'm a little bit conflicted coming into this because I think this is really important. A lot of people voted for this. Um, it is one that is very misunderstood, and so I want to make a distinction between what people kind of commonly use the word depression for, which may be more like commonplace experiences, and then depression in a clinical sense. And what I'm kind of most excited to go through at the end is like do's and don'ts. So if you're a family member or a friend watching this and wanting to understand, a loved one who's experiencing depression, stay tuned to the end or skip ahead if you want to. But depression, going to this slide now, um, depressed mood is something that we can all experience. And so depression, like the big major intense form of it, is really just intensified sadness and a lot of other things that come along with it, which I'll go through in the next slide. But so I want to make the distinction between clinically diagnosed depression and depression, how it might be used in common conversation now, which is perfectly normal. It is normal and within the spectrum of normal human emotion to have a depressed mood where things feel low and flat. We might, as a response, be really withdrawn from other people, from activities. Everything just kind of feels lower and muted and maybe a bit more painful or achy. And so this should not be stigmatized. Often, like depression or sadness in general is kind of seen as like a bad feeling, and we'll say, I'm feeling bad. And it's not bad, it's not good, it's neutral, it's part of our human experience. So everyone can experience depressed mood, and everyone does experience depressed mood. Depression in a clinical sense, and this would be the diagnosis of major depressive disorder, is more intense and has to meet certain markers. So part of why I was kind of nervous going into this video is that in my practice, I stay pretty far outside of like, here's your diagnosis, we're going to do this, and that means this about you, because I think that the way we diagnose people doesn't necessarily understand them as a whole human. But I do want to talk about the clinical criteria for major depressive disorder. So when we talk about depression, there's usually what's called depressive episodes. And so typically, even people with diagnosed major depressive disorder, they are not at the same level of depressed all the time, all day, every month of every year. We will have episodes. And so an episode is 2 weeks or more, but for some people it can last for much longer, like a month or like 6 months even. But so a depressive episode, and to meet criteria for major depressive disorder, is that for more than that 2 week period, you have to have 5 or more of these symptoms. So depressed mood, diminished interest or pleasure in activities, sleep disturbance, so that could be sleeping very little or sleeping a lot, overall fatigue, change in weight or appetite, feelings of worthlessness, decreased ability to think and concentrate. So this can also show up as like indecisiveness. And then there's one more on there, which is also like thoughts of self-harm or suicide. And all of these combined are not enough on their own to meet criteria for major depressive disorder. They also need to have created like a marked impairment in some or multiple areas of your life. They need to not be explained by any other diagnosis or any other kind of reason or cause for these things. And so those are the clinical criteria of major depressive disorder. So I want to make the clear distinction that there's a big difference between when we, in a commonplace way, say, oh, I'm depressed or I'm feeling depressed, versus, I've been diagnosed with depression. Both are equally valid. Why I want to make the distinction is that sometimes when we use this commonplace language of, oh, I'm depressed, when it's just a day of depressed mood or a week, or it's not this prolonged period, it can sometimes invalidate the experiences of those with diagnosed depression. So that's why I want to make that distinction. All that being said, take it seriously, no matter what. Like there is no reason to not. There's no reason to try and convince someone that they don't feel a certain way. There's no reason nor any helping that comes from denying how someone says they're feeling. And a lot of people also can't access a diagnosis because you have to connect with a doctor, psychologist, or psychiatrist to get an actual firm diagnosis. And a lot of people can't access that. So regardless of if they have this like title of, oh yeah, I have major depressive disorder, you need to take it seriously and understand that that person still needs love, support, and understanding, no matter what. So if you are noticing any of those signs from people, again, the depressed mood, the decreased interest in activities, the fatigue, changes in weight or appetite, any of those things, or if someone tells you that they're depressed, here's what you do and don't do. This could be a much bigger list, but these are the things that when I hear them as a therapist and when I'm speaking with clients that they experience these things, especially the ones in the don't side, they can be so invalidating and much worsening for what they're experiencing. So I wanted to kind of quickly go through these things. On the do's side, ask them if they want to talk about it. Depression is something where, even though it's in the commonplace language, it's still really stigmatized and people still really don't feel comfortable giving space for it. And a lot of times it's kind of all that we're thinking about if we're in a depressive episode or just experiencing depressed mood. So ask these people if they would like to talk to you and if they want you to listen. That does not mean immediately giving them solutions, but asking them if they want a space to talk and for you to just be a listening ear. Spending time with them, because depression, unfortunately, it leads us to isolate and to socially withdraw. And then that social isolation can intensify it. So spending time with them, even if that just means, being with them in whatever state they're in within their depression. So even if all they want to do is stay inside and watch TV, do that with them if they feel comfortable. And then ideally, if you can encourage them to do some sort of movement or like mobile activity with them. So it doesn't have to be going to the gym and doing like full-blown exercise, but doing something that does ideally get them up and moving in some way. Or even if it's just sitting down and you're like tossing a ball back and forth. Bringing mobility in is a very helpful way to lessen the severity of depression. For the don'ts, don't tell them that they have no reason to be depressed. Do not try to convince someone out of their depression. It will not work. It will make it so much worse. Do not ignore or isolate them. And this is to the degree where if someone says they want space, you can allow that, but do not say, okay, well, you're depressed. Tell me when you're not depressed, and I'll talk to you then, because that again will intensify whatever they're experiencing. And then to the last point, even though movement and mobility is good for them, do not force them into it. They still have every right to say what they do or don't want to do. They are not suddenly without rights because they're in this depressive episode. Allow them the choice and encourage them, but do not do so in a forceful or shaming way. I feel very aggressive right now, but holy man, it is so brutal when someone comes to me and they're experiencing depression and they tell me all these stories about friends and family who responded purely from this don't call them, and then so many other things on top of that, and it just makes it so much worse. The best thing that you can do to someone and to yourself if you're experiencing this is being open, understanding, and willing to listen, and non-judgmental. So that's depression. Check you guys on another episode. Thanks for watching. To all the parents out there, please pay attention. Bye.